Hello, viewer, and welcome to part 2 in my War on the Pacific Admirals Edition series. If you watched the first part, then you might know that I landed some troops in the Philippines here at a base called Naga in the south of Luzon. So, what I want to do in this and part 2 of this series is kind of show off the interface and what's involved in giving orders and what the user sees. And it's actually one of the parts of the game I have quite a few troubles with. As sort of a person professionally interested in user experience. And for beginners of the game, this is really an intimidating interface because you can't really... There's a lot of stuff between the user and what's actually happening. And what's presented to the user isn't always enough to let them make kind of informed decisions on how to play. So I'll try and break down a few of those walls and parse a little bit of the data for you. So the first thing you might notice is here's my amphibious task forces. They're still unloading troops. You can see that because in this indicator here you can still see a number after troops. And although this task force here is actually done unloading troops, they're trying to supply the forces. And here are my units. You can see 3 divisions, 3 infantry divisions, and a tank battalion. And the important things, when you click on just about anything, you sort of get this this view here that kind of is like expanding a collapsed folder almost in Windows or in a file system. So now you can see what units you have. The important thing in here is the assault value. The higher the better, obviously. And other things you can see what operations mode they're set to, and also what combat mode they're set to. One important thing to know in this game when you're managing an army is, the first thing you want to know is how do I attack somebody. So last turn when I landed them here at Luzon, they didn't make an attack because I wasn't able to assign them to do anything. But now I can. What I do is make sure combat's selected here and select operations mode. If you select the others, you get sort of a penalty. And I think in reserve you can't do anything. And then in combat orders, you select deliberate attack. By default you're set to defend, but I want all of my troops here to do a deliberate attack. And then you say set all to this combat orders, and that'll set everybody to do a deliberate attack. And I'll actually set everybody to defend, just so you sort of see that everybody in this list has changed. But I want to do a deliberate attack, so we'll set that. Here in the third, I guess, tier of detail, you can see a couple things like what equipment the unit contains. You have, or what kind of squads the unit has. See a bunch of rifle squads and artillery pieces and the like. I don't really know what any of it means, honestly, and there aren't any indicators of like a USA Rifle Squad 44 can't do anything to this type of unit, for example. So I tune it out. I just look at the assault value and a few of these other numbers that you can see. The big one is assault strength here. I keep on harping on that, but also you have experience and morale. The higher the better, obviously. Take part in the combat results calculations. And then you have disruption and fatigue, and in this case the lower the better. And when you're moving an amphibious unit, or somebody around in amphibious operations, they actually gradually get fatigue. I think about 6 or 7 points per turn is what I'm guessing. Never bothered to calculate it or write anything down, but all I did was sail them from Marianas to the Philippines, which is, maybe a week's journey by boat, maybe even less. So they're already 41 fatigue out of a possible 100. And then you have things like supplies and how many supplies are required. And these supply numbers, I think, are in tons if you're trying to figure out realism. Excuse me. And so obviously we're fine on supply, and then there's support and other things that I don't really care about. So that's how you set somebody to attack. If you want to set somebody to move, I'll go over here to the Burma and Thailand and Malaya area, and use some of these guys as an example. So I'll click here on my military or army unit and select the 63rd Indian Brigade. So say I want to move this guy 1 hex to the northeast. I just select set destination hex and then click on the hex I want to move to. It'll indicate you the march direction, the march distance, and the distance traveled. So each hex in the game I think is 40 nautical miles, which I guess translates to 46 real miles. So you can see the march distance here and then the distance traveled. If you let a turn go by, you'll see this distance traveled increases. Once it gets to a number 46 or greater, the unit will be in the next hex over. So what if you want to move by rail? First you need to make sure a railway system exists, and to do that you hit Y, and that kind of brings up highlights really all the railroads in the area. If you want a quick view, you're just looking at the map and don't feel like hitting something that takes you out of the gameplay experience like this, you can look at the legend up in the top right corner of the game map. That's actually where they put it for some reason. And you can see major and minor railways. There are these like solid black lines, major's thicker than the minor. And you can kind of see these railways kind of snaking around on the map. And to move somebody on a railway, first you have to set them to strategic move. And it'll take them a few days, depending on the type of unit. Can be between 1 and 3 to pack all their equipment and get on the train. When you're in strategic move, you hit set destination hex, and let's go somewhere really far away like Singapore. Gives a confirmation message, and you'll be off once your unit's all nice and packed up on the trains. So one thing to note when you're doing strategic moves, you can only move from base to base. So let's say I wanted to move my unit to here. Can only go from base to base, and then it kills your destination, which is kind of annoying. But that's how you move units by rail. Kind of a big deal, since it's a lot quicker than moving by foot. But let's move this guy up to the northeast, and we'll check on his progress in the next video. And next up, I'll talk a little bit about aircraft. So, as I mentioned in the first video, any hex with a flag in it, like this one here, or I guess for my example I'll use Shanghai, can contain an airfield and, if they're on the coast, also a port. So this little cross indicator icon thing up in the top right, that means there's an airfield there. So if I click it, get this new view showing all my air groups, and there's all sorts of filters, but screw that, I ignore it. One thing that's important though, aircraft stack level. Shanghai has, let's see, a level 7 airbase. So apparently level 7 airbase can only support 350 aircraft. Anything above that, you get some penalties. Not all of them can fly. I think only 350 of the possible ones can fly. So we might want to expand that, and I'll show you that later, how to expand an airfield later on. And then the next layer of detail is the air group itself. So I'll click on this unit here, this 11th Fighter Group of the 44th Fighter Squadron, China Air Force. And you can learn a couple things. You're flying a little-known airplane called the P-66 Vanguard. It's actually not that great. You can look at the aircraft data to see what it's armed with, and also its speed and maneuverability and things like that. And that's all taken into account when the dice are rolled. So I don't really know much more about that. Just the big war nuts and military hardware nuts would care about this type of stuff. But things that are important for planning purposes are its range, maximum range. That means if I want to transfer it from one base to another, how many hexes away is my limit. Second one is extended radius. If it's using drop tanks or something, how far out can it do things like patrol or escort bombers? That'd be 7 hexes in this case. And its normal radius is 6 hexes. Then it kind of goes into miles on top of that. But I only look at hexes for planning purposes. And you know, the rest of these numbers are just sort of to compare like units. So yeah, you see this has an armor rating of 1 and durability of 28, whereas, you know, if I looked at this P-38 squadron's aircraft data, its armor value is 1, but it's got a durability of 37, so it can take a little more damage. And it's faster, but its radius is a little shorter. Let's see, for commands that you can give, you can select the group mission. I have the P-38 set to escort, so you know, bomber raid goes out, then some of this squadron will go help out the bombers, protect them from any kind of fighter cover. But you can select just about anything depending on the aircraft type. So P-38's obviously a little versatile, so they can do some ground attacks, which are airfield, port, naval, or ground. Can also perform fighter sweeps, which will draw up any fighters that are based at the target hex. It can also train or stand down, which is basically training, and it sets the patrol level to 0. But let's talk about patrol levels real quick. And it's one of the more unintuitive parts of setting up, you know, controlling your air units. So you have your main mission here, which is escort, but patrol levels are sort of a secondary mission that go on. And the 4 options are combat air patrol, long range combat air patrol, training, and rest. Can set a combat air patrol, say 30, that means 30% of the planes in the squadron, so let's round up 30, about 8 or 9, you know, 7 or 8 actually, aircraft will be patrolling around, you know, looking for air raids and protecting whatever it's flying over. Long-range combat air patrol, actually, you get some penalties, like they can't stay out there as long, but you can select a hex to fly over by hitting select target and then doing that. But I don't want any target, I just want them protecting my airfield at Shanghai, so I'm going to right-click, and that'll cancel out the target. You know, who would find that out on their own? And set ourselves back to combat air patrol of 30 as the patrol level. And I think they kind of extend out maybe 2, maybe 3 hexes, unless you do a long range, in which case I guess it's just over that hex. I haven't figured it out yet. I'm not a great player at this game. I still have a lot to learn. And I guess we can look at bomber groups. They have a slightly different set of things. You can do anti-sub warfare patrols. You can do searches for enemy ships. And they can also train and rest. But I want these guys all to be attacking the port at Nagasaki. And that's this hex here. You can see it in the info box on the very top row that it's Nagasaki and Sasebo, I believe. And can set the altitude they fly at and maximum range and hexes. But I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in the second part of this, or the second video in this series of part 2, kind of showing off the interface. So I'm going to take a break and see you on the other side.